Welcome, everybody, to our end of the year NFL regular season report. The season just ended this past Sunday. So I've got two of my buddies here from what we call the Man Council. I've got Ross Bonar with us and Brandon Kessler. You guys want to say hi?
Well, great to be with you, Ben's class, once again for another NFL podcast. This is always a lot of fun, and even though it's not necessarily a lot of people watching, probably it's fun to play sports analyst for about an hour.
Hi, Mom.
Oh, nice. There you go. I'm not going to lie to you, Ross. I accidentally muted my whole computer, so anything you said that could have been towards me, I did not hear. So I was just smiling for you. But anyway, let's go ahead and get this started, and I'll listen to it when I watch this back. So anyway, everyone, what we're going to get started with this year are our surprises and disappointments for the 2015 season. I want to go ahead and get this started. I'm going to throw it to Ross to start it for us. Let's just do some of your surprises from this past season.
Well, I think there's quite a few big surprises this year, and a lot of them, in a way, were disappointments, and that is how bad some of these teams ended up being that were supposed to be good. And really, when it came down to teams that were expected to be good, most of them were. So that's what most of my surprises are, is actually disappointments. I'll start out with the Indianapolis Colts. That's a team that a lot of people picked to go to the Super Bowl and at least make the championship game. But instead, even when they had Andrew Luck healthy, they were ineffective, and then ultimately he ends up getting hurt, and it's just a terrible season for them. They still end up at 500, and we're right in the thick of things towards the end, but a very big disappointment for all the Colts fans out there this year. So that's probably one of my biggest ones. And then the other one, it kind of started out as a surprise, was the Atlanta Falcons, in that they started off so good. Because Matt Ryan, I've always said, is not someone you can rely on. And as it turned out, that was the case. And they became who I thought they were to begin the year, a very subpar team. They missed the playoffs. So my surprises this year were disappointments.
Nice. And I do remember you saying the Atlanta Falcons would pretty much crash and burn during our midseason report, so that was a really good pick on your part there. Brandon, you got any surprises or disappointments for us this season?
Yeah, we can go with we'll go individual player and then I'll do a team here. Individual player, I'm going to pick DeMarco Murray from the Philadelphia Eagles. I know none of us thought he would repeat what he did last year behind that strong offensive line of the Dallas Cowboys, but I don't think anyone thought he would drop off as much as he did. He had over 1,800 yards last year with 13 touchdowns. This year, he barely made it over 700 yards and only pulled in 6 touchdowns. So to me, that was a big disappointment from an offensive standpoint and for any fantasy team people out there that picked him up. The other disappointment I would say would be the Dallas Cowboys at home. Let's see. A fun stat that I saw on Facebook was the Dallas Cowboys had 1 win at their home stadium, and the Alabama Crimson Tide from college had 2 wins in their stadium. So just kind of funny that it played out that way. So I'm sure Jerry Jones did not appreciate that too much.
Yeah, that was a pretty neat stat. And being a Redskins fan, it was a stat that I enjoyed. I'm going to do a few here, and then I'll hit back to you guys to see if you agree or disagree. My really surprise this year was the impact that the rookies had. I mean, you could start at Jameis Winston, Marcus Mariota. You got Todd Gurley, who I'm sure we're all going to talk about here a little bit later on. Amari Cooper, even though he had a ton of drops, he was a stud for that offense. And you could even look at the defensive side of the ball with Marcus Peters up in Kansas City. I mean, the rookie impact, I can't remember a season in recent history where so many rookies had so much impact for their team. So that was definitely one of my surprises. I mean, you can't bypass the Panthers start at the Panthers record at 15-1, a great record for a team that many probably didn't even think would win their division. My disappointment for a player is Melvin Gordon. Man, that dude just 0 touchdowns receiving or rushing for the whole season. I couldn't believe that coming into the year. I remember him saying before the season started that his mom wouldn't even buy his jersey until he proved himself in the NFL. Well, his mom's going to be waiting a long time because I don't see him proving himself anytime soon, especially with that San Diego Chargers team, which is mostly a pass-first team. It's going to be really tough for him to make an impact. But also injuries. I mean, this season, the injury bug hit like crazy. The Baltimore Ravens, I think I added up, had like 16 total injuries for their whole team. It affected Joe Flacco, Justin Forsett, Terrell Suggs, Steve Smith Sr., Matt Elam, just to name a few. I mean, you had Romo go down, you had Peyton Manning go down, Mark Ingram, Le'Veon Bell. I mean, just all across the board, stud people going down this season. So those would be some of my surprises and disappointments. You guys have any others real quick that you want to hit?
Actually, I saved one for the second part of this question. My biggest surprise of this year in football, Ben Ward wins our fantasy league.
Hey, I don't know what to tell you. I worked my butt off for that fantasy championship. So anyway, I deserve that, and maybe at the end of this I can post some photos of our loser and what he had to do this past weekend, wear pink tutu and one of those old leather football helmets. So maybe I could do that as well. So, all right, so some of our surprises and disappointments for this season. Of course, there's plenty more that we could go about. I mean, the Chiefs' turnaround after those first 6 games was a big one. But let's go ahead and move on to the awards. And I want to start with the non-player award first. And I want us to hit on Coach of the Year for this 2015 regular season. I'm going to go to Brandon, and then I'm going to come back to me before we hit up Ross. So, Brandon, who's your Coach of the Year?
All right, Coach of the Year. This is going to be a fun one for Ross. Of course, everyone can go with the easy pick of the Panthers, going 15-1, almost having a 16-0 season, regular season. But I'm going to go with Andy Reid out of Kansas City. I don't think they'll make it very far in the playoffs, but the fact that they made the playoffs is awesome in its own. They started the season 1-5. They went on a 10-game winning streak to make it into the playoffs. Don't know if they'll make it out of the wild card round, but that was one heck of a run. So
I see Ross's face already beginning to think of things of his anti-Reid statement that he's about to make. So I agree with you, Brandon. I mean, Andy Reid is definitely up there towards Coach of the Year. I mean, the turnaround that the Chiefs made after those first 6 games and going on this run that they have hasn't been done in a long time. So definitely props to him. But I mean, honestly, how can you not go Ron Rivera with the Panthers? 15-1 season, great coach. A player's coach. The players love him. The players believe in what he's doing there. I saw an interesting thing that the past 3 winners of the Coach of the Year was Bruce Arians in 2012, Ron Rivera in 2013, Bruce Arians in 2014. So might as well keep that pattern going and hit up Ron Rivera for 2015 Coach of the Year. What do you say, Ross?
Okay, first of all, the Andy Reid pick is ridiculous, Brandon, and I'm going to tell you why. First off, if you're going to have a Coach of the Year, you're going to have someone who has their team ready to play at a high level to start the season. Starting at 1-5, that's not the way it is. Now let's talk Andy Reid for a second. He's probably a super nice guy, I imagine, and most players always seem to like him. A lot of fans always seem to like him. But the problem with Andy Reid is that everyone talks about him as, like, you know, this great offensive mind. Well, how's the Chiefs' offense doing this year? They're not winning because of their offense. They're winning because of their defense. Now, maybe he hired the defensive coach, and that should get him some credit for it. But the fact is the Chiefs are winning because of good defense right now, not because of Andy Reid and his great offensive mind. Now, my pick for Coach of the Year. I'm going to be going with one that I haven't actually heard a lot of talk about because there's so many obvious cases. Like, obviously, Ron Rivera is a really good choice, and he's probably going to be the guy that wins it. Bruce Arians, again, really obvious choice. These guys are popular picks, as Ben has mentioned in the past few years. Go ahead and give me Marvin Lewis for the Cincinnati Bengals this year. And the reason why is because he has put together a team that was consistent all year long and even managed to survive the loss of their starting quarterback, who was, even though he's Andy Dalton, was playing at an extremely high level all season long, still managed to go 2-1 with his rookie quarterback after the loss of Dalton, and only lost that one game by 3 points. Now, you want to talk about consistency over the course of the season, 12-4, 3 of those losses were by less than a touchdown. That's how good this Bengals team was this year. They were good on defense, they were well-balanced and good on offense, and Marvin Lewis has just done a great job of putting together that team and guiding it through the long NFL season, and again, even surviving something as potentially damaging as losing your starting quarterback. So give me Marvin Lewis, Bill Belichick, Bruce Arians, Ron Rivera, all great choices this year, but for me, it's the Cincinnati Bengals, Coach.
Look at Ross thinking outside the box. And I would like to mention for anyone watching, this is totally our opinions on who we think should win the awards. This isn't our predictions on who the people are going to choose, but just our own personal opinions. So, well, moving from Coach of the Year, 3 different choices. Got to love that to start off here.
I want to give a shout out to Jeff Fisher, who has not had a winning season in over 9 years, and he still has a head coaching job. I don't know what the St. Louis Rams are thinking, but somehow he manages to keep that head coaching job. So, all right, back to you.
Yeah, pretty crazy seeing him still as a head coach, but I'm not a GM, so I don't make those decisions. And I mean, quite a few coaches just lost their job this past week, so it'll be interesting. Just real quick, you guys, any predictions on where you think Chip Kelly will land?
Well, it's hard to say at this point. There's going to be a lot of people going after him just because he, is an out-of-the-box thinker. He's doing some different things in the NFL. Personally, as much as I hate having Jeff Fisher, I don't want Chip Kelly either. So we'll just stick with Mr. 7-9, Jeff Fisher for now, over in St. Louis.
Yeah, I saw an interesting thing that his agents reached out to, I think, the 49ers, which, man, I don't know if Kaepernick's going to want to stay there if he comes, but who knows. Tennessee's always also a landing spot. But anyway, let's get back to our picks. The next one, we want to hit one, comeback player of the year. I'm pretty sure, don't know how any of us don't pick the same person here. And so I'll go ahead and start it off. But, man, Eric Berry, I mean, hands down, has to be your comeback player of the year. Dude had diagnosed with cancer last season. This offseason, beat it and everything, came back to be a stud on that defense for the Kansas City Chiefs. And Carson Palmer's had a tremendous season coming back from that knee injury that he had, but I don't know how you do not go with Eric Berry for your comeback player of the year. Brandon?
Eric Berry is a great, easy choice. I'm going to go with Peyton Manning for his second-half effort with the Broncos' victory there. Or you could also probably go Doug Martin if you're a fantasy owner. I mean, he had a heck of a season compared to the last year. So,
comeback player of the year. A lot of interesting choices there, and Ben, you kind of got the obvious one. I'm going to go ahead and take Larry Fitzgerald for comeback player of the year. This is a guy who's a veteran guy, has been around forever, it seems like. Had a really big off year last year, but coming back really strong this year, had a big season, and was great veteran wide receiver core for Carson Palmer to throw to and also to guide along the young wide receivers. And the Arizona Cardinals were one of the best offenses in football this year, and Larry Fitzgerald was a big part of that. So that'll be my pick for comeback player of the year.
All right, now moving away from comeback player of the year, let's look at these rookies. I mean, I mentioned a few earlier about how many have had so much impact on their team the first season they've been in the league. Let's start off with defensive rookie of the year. Ross, I want to hear from you first.
Well, we've been talking about Kansas City Chiefs already. You mentioned him as one of the better defensive players of the year when you were talking about the rookies already. Marcus Peters, this guy not only tied for the league lead with 8 interceptions this year, but he was also led the league in passes defended at 26, and this is as a rookie. So you got a guy that came out of the first round out of Washington. Marcus Peters has been great for the Kansas City Chiefs, so kudos to them for making a great pick, and also to Marcus Peters for putting up those great stats all year long. And again, defense is the reason why the Chiefs are going to the playoffs this year, and Peters is a big part of that.
Brandon, what are you looking at?
I agree, Marcus Peters. Fun stat. His first career NFL game gets interception. His second career NFL game, he gets a defensive interception for a touchdown. He had 2 of those this year. Everything else that Ross said, I mean, he's just an amazing rookie. I just know that next year he's not going to get as many passes thrown his way because teams are going to get smart.
Yeah, it's going to be definitely our first unanimous pick for our rewards. I mean, you guys have already thrown out the stats. 1 forced fumble, 60 tackles on top of what you guys have already thrown out there. I was looking at Ronald Darby for the Bills as well. He had a really solid rookie season, 68 tackles, only 2 INTs, but he did defend 21 passes, which for a rookie, that's really good. So he was another guy I was looking at, but I mean, Marcus Peters, hands down, has to be your pick for Defensive Player of the Year, according to the Man Council. So here we go. Let's move on to the Offensive Player of the Year. Brandon, we'll start with you now.
Offensive Player of the Year or Offensive Rookie Player of the Year?
Offensive Rookie Player of the Year, my bad.
Another probably going to be unanimous, but we'll see if you guys mix it up a little bit. I live in St. Louis, and I'm going to go with Todd Gurley from the St. Louis Rams. He was third in rushing yards this year behind Adrian Peterson and Doug Martin. He had 100 yards or 100 rush attempts less than Adrian Peterson did. Some fun facts with him is going to be he only started 13 games this year. In the first 2 games he started, he probably only had about 15 to 25 snaps. So those really aren't considered games to me. So realistically, he did 1,100 yards in about 11 games this year. So he's going to be my offensive rookie of the year.
Ross, go ahead.
You know, I'm actually going to switch it up just to keep us from doing the unanimous thing a bunch of times here on the show. Todd Gurley, obviously great choice. As a Rams fan myself, I'd love to see him get it. I'm actually going to go ahead and go with David Johnson of the Arizona Cardinals. And here's the reason why. It took him a little while to get the job because Chris Johnson was in there for a lot of the year doing a nice job. But even before he got the job, he was working great as the goal line back. And when he got thrust into the lead role on, again, one of the best offenses in football, which is going to be a lot of pressure, especially for a young rookie, he has dominated since taking over that role and has been one of the top running backs in football, leading the way on an offense for one of the best teams in the league. So 14 touchdowns, I think, is the big takeaway stat for David Johnson. Todd Gurley only had 10 of them this year. So while Gurley has a big lead in the yardage, more touchdowns for David Johnson. And also, here's a great stat, 4.9 yards per carry this year. And so for me, I'll take David Johnson as the Rookie of the Year.
Yeah, I was just about to throw that stat out there. I mean, I didn't pick David Johnson, but those yards per carry, I mean, it's crazy. Todd Gurley did throw out 4.8. So I mean, he's not behind or not far behind Johnson there, but I'm with Brandon. I mean, and I understand your reasoning, Ross. And I mean, I think if Mariota hadn't gotten hurt, he could have been in the conversation as well. Winston, I mean, he had a high touchdown mark, too many INTs, not enough yards, very poor passer rating. I think it was under 85 passer rating, so just not at par there. Amari Cooper, another rookie that I mentioned, had tons of drops, but pretty much carried that receiving core, 6 touchdowns. But you have to go with Todd Gurley here. He was a stud on this offense, 13 games. And that third game, Brandon, only carried 6 times that first game, third of the season for the Rams, when he played, did not start, only carried 6 times. So he did this many yards, these many touchdowns, and so many less carries than what all of these other studs are doing. So definitely Todd Gurley here for me as well. I'm going to go with Brandon. So flipping it up, getting away from the rookies, let's go right into Defensive Player of the Year for you, Brandon.
Defensive Player of the Year, it was my midseason pick. We're going to just stick with Josh Norman. Like I said earlier, he's just a lockdown corner. He faced a lot of big-name receivers this year, Dez Bryant, Julio Jones, DeAndre Hopkins, T.Y. Hilton, and he shut them down very well. He had a very competitive, tough match with Odell Beckham. He did let 1 touchdown go, but that was a crazy game to watch. So I'm going to go with Josh Norman from the Carolina Panthers.
Man, Josh Norman's a tough pick for me to make for Defensive Player of the Year. Again, if we were back to our midseason report, I mean, he's got my pick, but he fell off a little too much in the second half of the season. Still a great cornerback, shut down cornerback. I mean, teams did not want to throw his direction, but man, I'm going to have to go with the good old boy. I'm going to have to stick with J.J. Watt for Defensive Player of the Year. And I mean, dude was a stud this year as well. 76 tackles, which was the second most among all D linemen in the league. Dude led the league with 17.5 sacks, which was first in the NFL. 3 fumbles forced, tied for second. Even recovered a fumble there. I would like to here. Actually, Ross, throw out your pick before I go any farther.
Well, I'm with you on this one, Ben. I'm going to go J.J. Watt, Houston Texans. Another unbelievable season for him, and a guy that's putting together a career full of them. And you threw out some of the good stats there, the 17.5 sacks. But one of the wildest stats is the fact that J.J. Watt this year had 6 multi-sack games. And then on top of that, there were only 6 games all season long where he failed to record a sack. Huge season for J.J. Watt, and it's one of the big reasons why the Houston Texans have won that division and going to the playoffs and actually have a shot to do something because of the defense that he's leading up. So I'll take J.J. Watt for Defensive Player of the Year.
where I was going to go before I let you make your pick, Ross, was I would like to shout out to Aaron Donald of the St. Louis Rams. I mean, that dude caused so much trouble for any offensive line that he went up against. Had 69 tackles, had 11 sacks this season. I mean, just an absolute beast in the trenches. A guy that opposing players said they did not want to face. Outside of, I know the Seattle Seahawks just said they thought he was average, but great guy that I thought could be there if J.J. Watt wasn't the runaway pick here. Let's move on and go into our offensive player of the year. Ross, I'll let you start this one.
We're kind of curious to see where you guys go with this one, but really looking at things for me, the choice came down to a wide receiver this year, and that is Antonio Brown of the Pittsburgh Steelers. What an unbelievable season he had. Tied for the league lead in receptions with 136 with Julio Jones. Julio was actually just a little bit better in yards, with both of them up over 1,800 yards, but 10 touchdowns for Antonio Brown. And the part that really, I think, sets him apart is some of these games he was just absolutely dominant over whatever quarterbacks the league could throw at him. And when you really look at the fact that for several of the games he had guys like Michael Vick and Landry Jones throwing to him when Big Ben was out, just an unbelievable season by Antonio Brown. I've read a stat here recently that Antonio Brown has the single best three-season stats of any wide receiver in NFL history, which is incredible what he's doing. So that's my offensive player of the year is Antonio Brown.
Brandon, who are you looking at?
We're going to go Cam Newton here. It's a pretty easy pick here. He had 35 passing touchdowns this year and 10 rushing touchdowns as a quarterback. Fun stat is Tom Brady had 36, so one more than Cam Newton, but Tom Brady also had 120 more passing attempts than Cam Newton did. You look at Cam Newton, and he didn't have that big playmaker wide receiver. He lost his stud wide receiver prior to the season starting. My understanding he's got Greg Olsen, but outside of that, he doesn't have a very good supporting cast. If it wasn't for him, the Carolina Panthers would not be 15-1.
Nice pick. Ross, I love the Antonio Brown pick. He actually made my list. Not going to be my final choice, but he did make my list along with 4 quarterbacks here. An interesting thing I want to throw out, the 4 quarterbacks that were on my list, Tom Brady, Cam Newton, Carson Palmer, Russell Wilson, they all had like career seasons, like highest amount of touchdowns ever since the past few seasons, lowest amount of interceptions, highest passer ratings, most yards. I mean, like top of the line seasons that any of them have ever had. The pick, and I hate to say this because I'm not a huge fan of the Seahawks, but I have to go with Russell Wilson. I mean, ever since Jimmy Graham has went down, this guy has been unstoppable. No defenses have been able to stop him from doing what he's doing. 34 touchdowns on the season passing for him, the most he's ever thrown in one season. Only put up 8 picks, over 4,000 yards, and get this, 110.1 passer rating to lead the league. Also threw in 553 rush yards with 1 touchdown that way. And keep in mind, he lost Jimmy Graham, who was supposed to be the go-to tight end for any team this year outside of Gronkowski. Lost Marshawn Lynch as well, which is a guy that he would dump down to quite a bit in past seasons. So I'm going to have to go with Russell Wilson here for Offensive Player of the Year. So we've given Player of the Years. We're going to go to the penultimate choice of MVP. Who is your guys' most valuable player for the 2015 season? Ross, you can go ahead and start it.
Well, not being a big fan of this particular gentleman myself, this was kind of a tough choice to go ahead and make, but Brandon rattled off all the stats. Your MVP this year is Cam Newton of the Carolina Panthers. Some folks might go ahead and throw out Tom Brady still. Some folks might throw out Carson Palmer. They've had great seasons. But what really sets it apart for me is what did Cam Newton really have around him on the Carolina Panthers as far as offense goes this year. And it'd be one thing if the Panthers had won a lot of these games where it was mostly the defense doing most of the work and they were just scoring just enough to get those wins. But some of these games, they were just blowing people out, scoring over 30 points in a lot of the games this year. And you think, okay, what happens if we take Cam Newton out of the equation? What are the Panthers doing? Well, in that case, they've got Derek Anderson throwing to Ted Ginn. Come on. So Jonathan Stewart was good this year, but this offense relies on Cam Newton. If you don't have Cam Newton, the Carolina Panthers would not have had the season they had. So that is the most valuable player this year.
Yeah, I have a feeling that we're probably going to have our second unanimous pick here out of all of our choices. I mean, I have to go Cam Newton. The guy meant more to the Carolina Panthers than anybody else did. When I look at most valuable player, I'm one of those believers that I don't look as much into stats, which Newton still put up tremendous stats. Brandon mentioned him just a minute ago. But somebody that this team would be in the complete opposite direction, as you just mentioned, Ross, if he was not there. Plus the excitement that he brought to that team hasn't been there for the Panthers in recent years. He's a guy that the players are surrounding. He's the guys that the players trust in. Definitely taking steps and definitely the MVP of the 2015 season. Brandon?
Cam Newton. That's all I got.
All right. Well, for those are our picks. If you're watching this, go ahead and make fun of us, mouth us if you think we're wrong. Throw out who you guys think are better. But we do think our picks are pretty legit for who we chose. To get into a little different segment of our show here, we want to look at the 2015 NFL playoffs. The way we're going to do this is we're just kind of going to discuss the wild card games since they are coming up, but then we're going to go straight into our championship picks and then our Super Bowl picks. So I want to start in the AFC, and I'll let you guys talk about both games and make both your picks. That way we're not going back and forth and back and forth. So let's start in the AFC, Brandon, with the 5-seed Kansas City Chiefs at the 4-seed Houston Texans. And then you got the 6-seed Pittsburgh Steelers at the 3-seed Cincinnati Bengals.
All right, my picks are going to be, let's go with the Chiefs on this one. I think they'll get out of the wild card round. Their defense is just going to be a little too much for the offense of the Houston Texans. I understand they got to face J.J. Watt. Let's just hope that Jeremy Maclin can get out there and make some plays for the Kansas City Chiefs. And then I'm going to go with the Pittsburgh Steelers. I think Big Ben, D'Angelo Williams, and Antonio Brown are just a little too much for the Cincinnati Bengals to handle.
I'm there with you. I think both road teams win this weekend. Kansas City's been looking strong. I mean, when you got that many wins in a row, the momentum is definitely on your side. It definitely with a Houston team where their offense struggles to put up points. It's a team that's there because of their defense. Kansas City, I think, can match the defense that Houston could put out there, plus score a few more points now that they have that receiving threat. And then I like Pittsburgh here. Now, this would be a completely different story if Andy Dalton was started, but A.J. McCarron's there. He's going to be the guy leading them into this game, and I think Ben Roethlisberger controls it. I think it's a high-scoring game. I don't know what the betting number is, but I'm already going to bet over for this game because it's probably going to be an outrageous score. But I want to go with the road teams as well here in the Chiefs and the Steelers. Ross?
Okay, I'm going to go against you guys on this one. I'm going to take the Texans over the Chiefs, and my reasoning why is because you could look at these two teams, and you've got two pretty strong defensive teams. Chiefs have been better at defense, but the Texans have had a real nice string of defense here closing out the season. So what's going to be the difference maker in the game? Well, you've got Alex Smith throwing to Jeremy Maclin. Not a whole lot at running back with the mix between Sharkhandrick West and Spencer Ware, so that's on the Chiefs side. Then over on the Texans side, you got Brian Hoyer throwing to DeAndre Hopkins, and this matchup is one I like to be able to get away and score some points against the Chiefs because neither team is real strong at running back. They're both strong at defense, so when the difference comes down to Brian Hoyer throwing to DeAndre Hopkins or Alex Smith throwing to a banged-up Jeremy Maclin at that after having a little bit of injury troubles there in the final week, I'll take the Texans there. Going to the other matchup, Steelers and Bengals. Well, I've had a ton of fun watching the Pittsburgh Steelers this year, especially because quite a few of them are on my fantasy team. But them losing D'Angelo Williams last week is going to hurt. Now, even if he makes it back for the game, he's still banged up. So is he going to be able to do what he did last time? Well, let's just flash back to a couple weeks ago when the Steelers played the Bengals, and D'Angelo Williams was the one carrying the offense in this game. Ben Roethlisberger didn't even throw a touchdown. Antonio Brown was held to 80 yards, and it was D'Angelo Williams who led the offense to the victory over the Bengals. That was A.J. McCarron's first start. Well, since then, he's gotten more comfortable in the offense, and if you've been watching the games the past couple of weeks, even though the Steelers won when they needed to, they've really been struggling out there, and Big Ben's been making a lot of mistakes. So I think that the Cincinnati Bengals are going to come through and pull out the win in this one. So I've got Texans and Bengals going to the next round.
It will be, if the Bengals win, it'll be a great sight to see. I mean, 4 straight years with a first-round loss. 6 straight playoff losses in the first round. They haven't won a playoff game since the 1990s. Definitely would be nice to see them win. We'll just see what happens this weekend. Switching conferences here, and we'll start with you, Ross, in the NFC. We've got the 5-seed Green Bay Packers going up against the 4-seed Washington Redskins. Then we got the 6-seed Seattle Seahawks going up against the 3-seed Minnesota Vikings. Who do you like?
Okay, Green Bay Packers, Washington Redskins. Boy, beginning of the season, I would have been laughing at you for wearing that T-shirt because I wouldn't think there's any chance the Redskins were going to be in the playoffs. Well, guess what? Not only are they in the playoffs, but I think they're going to win here in the first round because you got 2 teams going in completely opposite directions right now. You've got the Packers, who are struggling to score points. They've barely been able to manage 20 points in their last few games. And then you have got the Redskins, whose offense is on fire because of who? Kirk Cousins. Ben, I know you like that.
What do you think with the Seattle-Minnesota game there?
All right, so I'm going to get a little crazy on this one here because I think that probably the consensus pick for most people is going to be the Seahawks, especially after they got just absolutely killed the Vikings a few weeks ago, some 30-something to 3, whatever it was. But I am going to pick the Minnesota Vikings to win this game, and here's why. Word is right now that Marshawn Lynch is going to be returning to the Seahawks this weekend. I don't think that's a good thing, and here's why. Because in the games that Marshawn Lynch started before getting hurt, which was weeks 1 through about 10, the Seahawks were only averaging around 20 points per game. They were struggling to score points. This was not a good offense. Well, all of a sudden you lose Marshawn Lynch, and all of a sudden the offense is firing away because Russell Wilson is given the opportunity to be a passing first quarterback, which is not the way the Seahawks offense normally operates. And all of a sudden now the Seahawks are putting up over 35 points a game, and they have a big winning streak, and they're going into the playoffs with all this momentum, and all of a sudden you're just going to throw all that off by bringing Marshawn Lynch and going back to run first. I don't think that's going to work against the Vikings. I think Adrian Peterson's going to have a big game, and I think that the Vikings defense is going to step it up, and they're going to just eke out a victory and get into the next round.
I feel like I need to abstain from the Packers and Redskins pick since I'm such a big Redskins fan. But I'm going to make the pick, and I'm going to go with the Redskins. Big surprise there. I mean, Kirk Cousins is playing at an elite level. I mean, I don't care what anybody says. He's playing at an elite level, a guy that so glad Jay Gruden's there to bring him along because who knows where we would be at if RG3 was still the quarterback of this team. So I don't know what's going on with the Packers. I mean, Aaron Rodgers and that offense are sputtering, going in the complete opposite direction of the Redskins, as you said, Ross. So I do like the Redskins to win this game at home. Because it's at home, I like the Redskins to win this game. Speaking of the other game, Seattle and Minnesota, I know Marshawn Lynch is coming back, like you said, Ross. I understand your points there, but Seattle's riding such a high right now that I honestly think Russell Wilson takes control of this game and that Marshawn Lynch doesn't get the amount of carries that he normally gets. I see him getting less than 10 carries this game, actually, whether it be because he re-injures himself or because Russell Wilson just controls it. I mean, Minnesota has a pretty decent D-line. However, that secondary and linebacker crew is a little skeptical at times. And so I do like Seattle and Russell Wilson to be able to put some points up on the board here. Brandon, what are you looking at for these two games?
I'm going to go with the Green Bay Packers. I'm going to mix it up a little bit here. I understand it's in Washington. I understand the Redskins are playing better than the Green Bay Packers. But at the end of the day, if I'm going to start a franchise, I'm going to start it with Aaron Rodgers. I think he's just an elite quarterback. I think he was one of the few quarterbacks that actually did it right. He got to sit behind of a Hall of Famer, Brett Favre, actually learned the system, learned to be an NFL quarterback. A lot of quarterbacks nowadays don't have that opportunity. So I understand the Green Bay Packers are struggling a little bit, but I think Aaron Rodgers has enough leadership and good enough arm to just inch past the Washington Redskins. On the other side, I'm going to go with the Seattle Seahawks. I understand Ross's point of bringing Marshawn Lynch back, but I don't think they're going to go back to a run-first offense. I think Marshawn may get 15 carries at the most. I think they're going to keep rolling with Russell. But the nice thing about bringing Marshawn back is now the defense has to put that into their game plan because Marshawn can at any moment just truck you and just keep running the ball. So now they got to implement that into their scheme. So I say Marshawn Lynch has at most 15 carries and Russell Wilson has 3 touchdowns.
3 touchdowns, Russell Wilson. Just give Marshawn Lynch like 20 bowls of skills before the game, and he'll just become the best player ever again, I guess. So anyway, we're going to skip kind of the next round and just go straight into who do we think are going to be our AFC and NFC champions. You guys can speak briefly about why you think they're going to get there. But, Brandon, let me just throw it back to you. Do both conferences. Who do you think is going to be your AFC champion as well as your NFC champion?
Ooh, that's a tough one. I think AFC, it's going to be the Patriots. I think Tom Brady and that cast with Bill Belichick will find another way to cheat their way into the AFC championship. So we're going to go with the New England Patriots there. On the NFC, the easy choice, I think, is going to be the Panthers, but I don't know if it's necessarily going to be them. I mean, the Seattle Seahawks are just playing on all cylinders wide open right now. I think with Marshawn coming back, I think it'll end up being the Panthers and the Seahawks, and I think the Seahawks might beat them on that one.
Ross, what are you looking at?
Well, interestingly, I'm actually sticking with my same picks I made back at the midseason. I think the Patriots are still going to be able to pull it out in the AFC. I mean, all these teams are flawed if you really look at it. Peyton Manning sure came back in the last half of that game and was able to lead the Broncos to the win they needed to get the number 1 seed. He's not going to be enough to get it done, and Brock Osweiler's not going to be enough to get them to a Super Bowl, in my opinion. Now, the Bengals, I picked them to take a first-round victory with A.J. McCarron. Well, I really think Andy Dalton's going to come back for that next game, and I think Andy Dalton is still going to fail to win a playoff game once again. So hope the Bengals enjoy their first playoff win in quite some time because it's going to be the only one they're going to get. And the Patriots are going to go ahead, take it to the house, and go to another Super Bowl. And then over on the other side, I've got the Carolina Panthers continuing to march right on through. In my matchup in the AFC game, I've actually got the Arizona Cardinals. They've been great all this year. I think you're going to have Cardinals and Panthers, and I think it's going to be a great game, but I think the Panthers get it done, and you got your Patriots-Panthers Super Bowl.
Well, we're definitely consensus in the AFC. I think it would be a completely different story if the injuries didn't take place as they did, but Patriots in that offense, I think, are going to be able to handle what the defenses are throwing at them. Of course, Alex Smith will never win a Super Bowl, so I mean, you might as well throw the Chiefs out as soon as they get to play. The Patriots, in my opinion, is who they would play since I picked Pittsburgh to win. Pittsburgh would go to Denver there. I think we see another Manning. I think Manning comes back by the championship game at the latest, and I think we see another Brady-Manning matchup. And history repeats itself with Brady taking control of that game and the Patriots definitely moving on. In the NFC, I like Seattle to run through until they get to that championship game and face the Arizona Cardinals. I think their offense can just put up so many points. Now, here's the crazy thing, because I know the Seahawks just destroyed the Arizona Cardinals. I totally understand that, but playoffs are a whole new ball game. Russell Wilson showed last year that he can make a mistake in prime time, and when it matters, he can make a mistake. And I think Carson Palmer has a lot to prove after he got injured last year. I think they want it more than the Seahawks do, and I think their offense is just too strong. I think their defense will be able to turn things around. I mean, losing Matthew there towards the end of the season was a big hit. He was another guy that could have been up there towards Defensive Player of the Year if he hadn't gotten injured. But I think the Arizona Cardinals offense will be able to do enough to put them into the Super Bowl against the New England Patriots. Real quick, I'll just throw it out there, and then I'll turn it over to you guys for your Super Bowl pick. But since I'm already talking about it, I'm going to go out on a limb here, and I'm choosing the Arizona Cardinals as our Super Bowl champion. I think Carson Palmer, Ross, you mentioned a little bit earlier, to Larry Fitzgerald, David Johnson, Michael Floyd. I mean, you got you've got weapons all around him and a much stronger defense than what the New England Patriots have in that Super Bowl matchup. I think it'll again be another high-scoring game. I think every game the Cardinals are in will be high-scoring, but I think their defense will do just enough, and the Cardinals' offense will roll to get them that Super Bowl win. Brandon, what are you looking at for your Super Bowl champion, and then we'll end up with Ross here.
I'm going to pick the New England Patriots with Steven Jackson.
Well, I'm going to go ahead and go with the New England Patriots as well, and it's going to be a back-to-back. Lots of fans are going to hate it, and I'm going to enjoy watching that.
Can't say I really want the New England Patriots to win another one, but man, do you think this would be Brady's most rewarding one ever if he won? It'd be kind of neat to see that and all the fans trashing him. So, of course, being a Washington Redskins fan, my hopes are that they will make it all the way, but they're definitely going to come up against a roadblock in Arizona there in the divisional rounds. So, anyway, before we log off here, guys, I just want to ask you, do you guys see any crazy things? What are some predictions maybe you guys have for the 2016 NFL season, whether it be with coaches, with players, crazy, early, outrageous Super Bowl pick, anything you guys want to throw out there for next season?
Well, when looking ahead to next season, there's a lot of things that'll be interesting, but I think the coaching changes is going to play a lot into it. Actually, I think one thing you're going to see next season that almost seems like it'd be a surprise at this point, if you got a healthy Tony Romo next year, I think the Cowboys are going to be a force to be reckoned with. This division that they were in this year was bad. I don't really see it getting a lot better next year because you're going to have coaching changes in Philly and in New York for the Giants. I can see the Cowboys get everybody healthy and they make themselves a run and be a real force to contend with in the NFC next year.
Brandon, anything off the top of your head?
The St. Louis Rams will be called the St. Louis Rams. They're going to stay in St. Louis next year, and that's going to be my bold prediction. And Marshawn Lynch gets traded.
I think that bold prediction's going to be proven wrong here very shortly. So I wish they could stay. Of course, all of us live in Missouri. It's nice to be able to drive just a couple hours to go watch an NFL football team play. That's not the Kansas City Chiefs, but I think they're definitely moving. I think San Diego's on the short end of that stick, and San Diego stays in San Diego where they do not want to be. My thing is, and it's not really a prediction or anything, Ross, I was going to kind of hit on the coaches, but since you did, I don't want to hit on it. But I just want to say the NFL owners and GMs need to expand their horizons. I'm tired of hearing about all these offensive and defensive NFL coordinators who are being the ones interviewing for these head coaching jobs. Totally understand it. They've been there. They're proving themselves. But, man, look into that college pool every once in a while because you're going to find some great coaches down there. I mean, I know he's not going to go there, and I know he retired after the end of this season, but Gary Pinkel, for one, I think would have been an amazing NFL head coach if he had that opportunity. Don't think he wanted that opportunity, but if he had. So just if they would expand their horizons a little bit, maybe look outside of the 2 or 3 people that they know, I think they could find some diamonds in the rough. So anyway, you guys have any last-minute thoughts you want to throw out before we sign off?
Well, you kind of mentioned, surprises, interesting things for next year. I actually think one of those things happened today, and it was that the Cleveland Browns, after cleaning house, which they really needed to do, made a really bold, really interesting move in hiring Paul DePodesta to come in and be the vice president of the team. They picked a guy who worked for the New York Mets baseball team to come in and run their football program. Any of you guys who watch Moneyball, this is the Jonah Hill character, Paul DePodesta, pretty smart guy, lots of analytics, lots of stats. It's going to be a whole nother approach because that's not something you see as much in football as you do in baseball. It could be a giant disaster like everything else for the Cleveland Browns is, but they had to do something different, and they're thinking out of the box, and it could be really interesting.
Another big surprise, definitely Chuck Pagano keeping his job there in Indianapolis. Good guy, though. I'm glad he's staying there, and I think that team turns it around next season with a healthy Andrew Luck. So anyway, Brandon, Ross, thank you guys so much for joining me on this. I hope anyone that's watching enjoyed it. And like I said, if you have anything to argue with us about or agree with us about, go ahead and throw it in the comments section there, and talk away. So anyway, thanks again, guys. Have a good one.